5 workouts wasn't enough to determine who's going to regionals. So next week we're doing 17.6. Fuck all your vacations and fuck your businesses.
But it's an endurance sport, unless the layout changes. But if the open stays the way that it is right now, you need an engine and you need muscle endurance and you need proficiency in gymnastics to get through stage 1. So if you don't develop that, you're just wasting your time. So you still do need to get stronger. You're like way off in your strength metrics. It still needs to be a prioritization, but it shouldn't be your obsession.
Now, brown cow. All right, am I supposed to just go? Are you waiting? You guys are both waiting for me to go? I thought Mike was gonna fucking intro me. Did we decide against that?
I just love this.
God, this is so awkward.
I always feel so vulnerable talking to you about shit.
I
wish
that the audience could be in this room to feel the awkward tension that is created just by having Mike here.
I'm glad that I'm making it.
All right, so the Open's over. You know if you made regionals, you know if you made regionals on a team, you know if you made the Masters qualifier for your Masters qualifier, you know if you improved your number based on what your goal and your target was. What now? Your year's over. If you didn't make it. For everybody else, you're just still training. So if you're getting ready for the Masters qualifier or regionals or whatever you're getting ready for, keep training. Don't really change anything. This video is not really for you unless you coach people that are in that type of a situation. So this also will be, I think, valid and important as just a general recommendation for what to do when you hit the end point of your season. But I wanted to talk about the cyclical nature of sports and how I approach it. I'm not saying that my way is the right way. I do think that this way will allow you to build a self-concept long-term and allow you to stay healthy long-term and allow you to keep your passion for the sport long-term. But there's plenty of ways to skin the cat. So the first thing that I always tell people is take some time off. I don't mean like, I'm not going hard anymore, or I'm in the gym every day, but I'm only doing an easy Metcon. I mean off. Get away from the gym, get out, sleep more, overfeed, get some extra massages, go see movies, just do nothing and disconnect from physical stress for a period of time. Now, that time will be dependent upon just how your body feels, how hard you pushed, what your training age is, how old you are, if you have aches and pains. But just in general, as a general rule of thumb, take some time off. Now, that being said, I know what the fitness community is like. I know what I would have been like when I was an athlete. You hear like, there's no such thing as an off season in this sport, or fitness never sleeps, or while you're sleeping, I'm training. And there's like a whole group of people that are determined to slam their heads into the wall of their limits 24/7 until their body breaks. If you're one of those people and you think that that strategy of pushing yourself is optimal, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. Just keep doing it. And if it ends up not working, then change your thought process. I'm not in the business of trying to convince people they're wrong. I'm only in the business of communicating how I do things and why I do them, so that the people that want to do them that way, who want to become their best versions of themselves, know how I approach things as a guide and what my organization thinks. So for everyone else, if you're used to year ending and you're back in the gym on Monday, slamming hard training again, stop doing that. Just take a break. De-stressing in general is good for adaptation. So the way that your body adapts to stress is by first having to perceive stress. So if you're in a chronic state of needing absolute maximal intensity training sessions to stimulate an adaptation, then your body can't perceive stress that's any less than that maximal intensity. But if you take 2 weeks off and you lower your body's perception of stressors and you get back into training, then your body will be more likely to perceive a stressor to adapt to it. And this is kind of the phenomenon that I've noticed when I tell high-level athletes to take some time off and they come back into training, they say, oh my God, my breathing feels terrible. But the reality might not be that their breathing actually feels terrible. It just might be that they're now able to perceive how their breathing feels when they're going at maximal intensity without doing it all the time to the point that they get used to it. So it's important for the adaptive process to have these back off periods where you get away from the stress. And the best time to do it when you can actually afford to lose a little bit of fitness is in the off season. I tell everyone also that my best athletes are the people that I have that take the most time off. When you get older, or if you're just really not that talented, you can't really put that much stress into a training session. So if you're not putting that much stress into a training session, you don't really need as much recovery till you do another one because the stress response isn't as potent. But when you start doing, 16.5 in 7.5 minutes or 8 minutes, that's a lot of stress and a lot of contractions and a lot of body heat and a lot of stress that needs to be adapted to. So those people require more off time because they're putting themselves through such intense stressors. So the Open is 5 weeks of long competition. That's stressful. You need to get away from it. Regionals is probably, for the people that are going to regionals, not as physically stressful, but it's very emotionally stressful. You're trying to get a spot back at the games or improve upon last year. The judging standards are something that you have to focus on. The layout's very different than your gym. It's in a new environment. It's chaotic. There's people that are your idols that are there, and there's a lot of stuff that's going through your head. And then the games is just a survival state, right? People are getting just beat down. So those 3 important times in the sport are times that require or that I would suggest afterwards just taking a step back and getting perspective about what happened, how you can get better. I think doing this will allow you to not burn out. I've seen so many athletes that are like, I want to take a year off. I've been doing this for 3 years. That's funny to me because people that are in, a professional sport like the NBA start playing basketball on AAU teams and all of that stuff at 10 years old, and they play continuously every year from the time they're 10 until some of them in their mid or late 30s. So why don't they burn out? Now, obviously, they might not burn out because they become millionaires from their sport, and there's a whole bunch of other factors that go into it. But if somebody can do it in another sport, then using some principles of how they model their years and have off seasons and time to spend with their families, and they don't get wholly obsessed and defined by that one task, is something that you should take into consideration. There's no way around hard work. You want to be a great CrossFit athlete or any athlete in any sport. You want to be super lean, you want to be a great ultra runner, or you want to be a great weightlifter. There just is no shortcut to hard work. However, that doesn't mean that you have to be doing that all the time, all year round, every single day, and every single minute. There can be a time built in for your psyche, for your emotional state, for your body that is just a little bit of a retreat, like comforting your body, taking care of it, being easy. It doesn't always require the hard work. So if there's a time of the year to do that, it's right now. You just finished the Open. It was probably traumatic if you hated where you were on the leaderboard. So just back off and take it easy. Next, you have to plan. This is a skill that I've seen, especially in athletes, to be very, very, very poor. People don't know how to evaluate what they're good at and what they're bad at. Review all your footage, review the workouts, look at where you finished on the leaderboard, figure out what your weakness was in that specific workout. Now, people will just say engine. If that's what you think your limitation is, it's never that simple. I think we've already posted a limitations video, and we'll continue to post more about that kind of explain the complexity of limitations that comes out in CrossFit events. So obviously, without too much education or too much experience in the sport, you might not know what your exact limiter is, but go through the planning process of evaluating what actually happened and what you need to do to get better. Sometimes the answer is, well, I don't really want to be a competitor anymore, which is okay. Everybody at some point steps out of competition or wants to use fitness as a place that they could de-stress from something else in their life. Like, work is really stressful. I want my fitness regimen not to be as stressful. That's an okay decision to make. And at these kind of points that you kind of get to a turning point in life after the Open, you kind of get to a fork in the road to determine, do I want to continue down this path of athletic development where I'm trying to get better, or are there aspects of this sport that I really love, but maybe the competitive side of it's not fitting me and I'll go down this road. This is the time where you can actually plan and evaluate and consult with people and talk to your loved ones and talk to a coach and make those kind of decisions for yourself. Next, within planning, would be make coaching decisions. I usually have a rule that I don't take people on anywhere around the beginning of the year, especially if they're good athletes. All you're doing when you're first taking an athlete on is evaluating them. You put them through like evaluations, tests, screens, getting to know who they are, how they operate, what they do at competition. So there's really no value that a coach could add if they take you on too late. The longer you're with someone, the more they can set you up for success. So if you're going to make a coaching change or a coaching decision, now is the time of the year to do it if you want to be prepared as well as possible for next year's Open. So what does that take into consideration? Go and see what your options are. There's people that do individual coaching. There's people that have groups out there where you join a group of other people, so you have comparative scores, but you're following a group design. There's just free blogs that you could follow. You could get one-on-one coaching. There's a ton of different alternatives. Figure out what the cost is, what your budget is, what you need in a coach, and really go through your due diligence process of figuring out what an appropriate coach for your needs is. And then the last thing I think that goes into the planning process is making a determination of where you're going to compete. People in this sport, I think there's this, I don't want to say simple-minded, but this reduced way of thinking about competing and thinking about preparing for the sport and saying things like, well, you don't really need to practice competing because doing more CrossFit is preparing you for CrossFit. I agree and I understand what that argument is, but the nature of a competition that's 5 weeks long where you have one workout and the opportunity to repeat it each week is very different than what's required if you go to an in-person competition where there's multiple events throughout a day and it lasts multiple days. So if you're somebody that's having trouble in an open environment, but if you go to a local competition or a regional type environment and you crush it because you're better at dealing with the chaos, then you need to find competitions that have online qualifiers to get your competitive practice in those, maybe even without the thought that you're going to go if you do qualify, just practicing online competitions or emailing your coach or a group of friends that you have who are around the world and setting up mini competitions where you guys pick one workout to do. You know, if you want to put some pressure on the line, put some money in a pot, and whoever wins the workout and has video of it gets the money that's in there, or pride, or a group of people that you just shit talk with. But you need to practice the environment that you need to get better at. So make sure that within the planning, you're figuring out what your weaknesses are that you need to work on. You're figuring out your coaching for the next year, and hopefully it is a decision in your head that you're thinking is a year-long process. People get coaches and then within 2 or 3 weeks, they're like, I'm not happy. It's not a coach's job to make you happy. It's a coach's job to make you better while trying to also satisfy your emotional state. But it's no one else's responsibility to make you happy. Happiness and your emotional state is largely controlled by your own experience and your own perception of what's going on. It's a coach's job to make you better, to give you evaluations, to challenge you. So make sure that when you're making that decision, you're thinking more long-term so that you can set yourself up for success. If you're a program hopper, I don't think you'll see many people that are program hopping that are succeeding long-term at the highest level of their potential. Now, there will be people from a ton of different organizations that are successful, successful, but the key is consistency with the coach. So make sure when you make that decision, you're figuring out what brand you want to follow, how much you want to pay, what their reputation is, what they've done in the past, how much longevity they've had, and put all of those decisions into your, or all of that data into your decision-making process. I like to think about fitness in general. So this is just to help with your coaching decision, or to help with your planning decision, or to help figure out how you go about your training. I like to think about it like money management. There's tons of ways that people manage their money. Some people, they don't even look at their bank account. They put their money on their credit card. They buy whatever they want on a whim. Some people look at every single detail and look at, okay, what's my credit? What's my budget? How much can I spend? How much money do I have for, for my fun stuff? How much money do I have for the stuff that I need? How much money do I have for my food? There's investors who save all their money and are constantly thinking about long-term development, and different ways of thinking about money will yield different levels of result. But you'll see themes. The people who are the most rich in the world, or the people who are the best investors in the world, will be looking at the same things. They won't be thinking about all of the same nuance, but there's principles with regards to how they approach things. You won't see many billionaires who made their fortune as competitive gamblers, right? Like, because there's just a principle of risk reward that goes into that decision. And I think the same thing is true in the fitness world. So you have to find a coach or a philosophy or a way of thinking that you think is going to vibe with how you operate as a human being, as an emotional being, somebody that is telling you how to approach your day-to-day experience so you become the best athlete, that is in line with how you want to live. If you're not a super analytical human being, or you don't want to be asked questions, or you don't want to be, told after looking at your video that you didn't approach it with the right mind state, you didn't go hard enough, then you probably don't want an honest coaching organization, and you might be better off having a blog where you don't have to answer to somebody. And finding out what fits for you is an important part of that quest. So take that decision really, really, really seriously. And I only put this in my video because if this piece of media is going to attract a new audience and new athletes to come to my organization, I want them to be the right ones. I don't want the wrong clients to come, because I'm just setting them up for success. We are always going to take a more mindful approach to training. Some people don't like that. Some really successful athletes don't like to think about their training. I have to deal with some of my own athletes and tell them, hey, don't think about this. Just go out there and do it. No pacing, no nothing, just you and the workout. Just go and fight it. Like, max effort, race everybody. I would never take that approach for myself in a sport, but sometimes that process just requires like some individuality. So make sure you're choosing what you want in a coach effectively in this off season. If you think you can coach yourself, that's fine too. But make sure that now is the time that you're going through that process. Every sport has some sort of a timeline that exists. So if you're an Olympian, there's a 4-year timeline. If you're a PGA Tour player, there's a 1-year timeline. If you're an NBA player, there's a 1-year timeline. If you're a CrossFitter, there's a 1-year timeline. So for people that are open level athletes, you start your season in February, you end, or late February, early March, you end in the end of March, and then throughout the course of the year, you have time to prepare and get better. And then it cycles back to the beginning of the season. And aligning your life and your thinking time and your planning to support that year is very, very, very important. So after you go through that process, the things that I think you actually need to do as a trainee in your off season are the following. Technique, and that includes movement quality of your individual joints. So if we just simplify this and say, hey, you want to snatch? You can talk to an Olympic lifting coach that can tell you about first pull mechanics, biomechanics, how to get into the hip, your retreat, your positions overhead, how to grab the bar, where to put pressure, where to hold it, how to put your hook grip. But if your body can't move into the positions that a snatch requires, that requires an entirely different training program. Now is the time to fix both of them, to set your year up so that you're doing your lower intensity work and building a foundational base to be able to move more efficiently now, which we'll cover in our next 2 videos are going to be more comprehensively about movement and movement quality in general as limitations for the sport and how to get better at them. Then doing more low intensity aerobic work. So in general, if you want to be an aerobic athlete, you want to develop an engine, you do kind of have to always be working on it. But there's times in the year that you're pushing that respiratory system and your cardiovascular system to max effort, and some where you're just doing more low intensity work and you're trying to get cardiac hypertrophy and you're trying to build your transport system and you're just trying to build a training base. Now is the time of the year that you actually can have the patience to just do some long, slow, easy stuff and build a base and make sure your nervous system isn't constantly stimulated and overstressed. It'll be helpful for you. It'll allow you to accumulate more volume of low intensity movements. It'll allow you to work on your technique and your movement patterns, and all of that stuff will be really, really helpful. Next would be decreasing pain signaling. So your body generally when you go through a competitive season is a little beat up. There was a lot of gymnastics in the open, there's a lot of barbell work, there's a lot of dumbbell work, and your elbows might be hot, your shoulders might be hot, your knees might be hot. Now's the time of the year to get that really taken care of. You want to try to, if you're pushing your body and you're in a sport, you might never be like completely pain-free, but as close as you can possibly get would be what you would work on now. That might be 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I don't know what the actual timeline is, but invest more in body work, more in self-directed movement work, more in meditation, more in seeing PTs and getting alternative perspectives. Go get a movement screen. Take care of your body and your mind now. And then I think the last is more of a philosophy thing about sport. For some reason, the CrossFit space in general has started to be influenced very heavily by body composition sports. So there's body comp experts and fitness model experts that are coming into the sport and giving nutritional advice. And there's a lot of Instagram and, selling sexuality going on in there. So I think people are really, really concerned about their body image. And it is important in the sport to have a good strength to body weight ratio and to be able to play the physics game well. However, if there's a time in the year that you want to relax your diet, take it easy, go out to eat with your friends, go do things and just experience food as a pleasurable thing, it's now. You can afford to put on a couple pounds of body weight. You can afford to go out and spend some time with your family or your friends or your loved ones and do normal human things. And now is the time to do it. There is a consequence, and I know this from cutting weight for a long time in wrestling and when I was grappling and then in CrossFit, there is a serious consequence to your psychology and how you think about food and to your actual body. So it is okay to be very, very detailed with your nutrition for large portions of the year, but sometimes you should just back away from that, and now would be the time to do it. So after you kind of get that whole period of time done, it might be 4 weeks from front to back, it might be 6 weeks, it might be 8 weeks. After that, you incrementally and slowly start to build your intensity back up and then get into a rhythm and start hammering it and preparing for next year. So if you follow those guidelines, I think it will set you up for a good 2018 season. I think that it will conclude 2017 well and you can get your emotional state back into a good space, and good luck with your training.
In the next video, can we talk about why coaches can guarantee success?
We can't do that because that was the last video.
No, why they can guarantee success.
Oh, why they can guarantee success. Yeah, that'd be a good counter. I'll just argue on both sides of the argument for fun. Cool.
Twofer.
Should I keep this out?
We got a twofer, ladies and gentlemen.
What was that look?
I just want to see his face.